Beyond ancient copies of the Hebrew Bible and commentaries on the Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls contain a wealth of original sectarian writings. For example, there are a number of previously unknown non-biblical psalms scattered across a scroll containing the standard psalms from the Hebrew Bible. One of these psalms was already known in its Greek version as part of the Septuagint, or Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, and the Qumran scroll now gives us the original Hebrew. There are 150 psalms in the traditional Hebrew Bible. This one we may call Psalm 151. It describes the experience of young David, who was chosen from among all his family to be king in Israel. It reads in part, Katan ayiti min achai, וצעיר מבני אבי, וישימני רועה לצונו, ומושל בגדיותיו. Among the parchment fragments were also found commentaries on certain biblical psalms. One partial commentary on Psalm 37 was found in Cave 4, and it begins, Dom LaHashem, v'hitcholel lo, Al titchar b'matzliach darko. Ba'ish oseh mazimot. Parshu al ish hakazav, asher yat'eh rabim be'imre sheker. Who is this man of Delay? Is he similar to what the New Testament calls the Antichrist? Or perhaps he is the same as a shadowy figure referred to elsewhere in the scrolls as the wicked priest. Indeed, there are many names used by the Qumran Brotherhood to describe their enemies, also including the preacher of lies and the man of scoffing. And it appears that whoever this person was, he opposed the teacher of righteousness at some time in the past and brought about his demise. The commentary interprets specific verses of the psalm as referring to the teacher of righteousness, presumably via some clairvoyance. For example, Psalm 37:3 reads, Mehashem mitzadeh gever konanu. The Qumran commentary, however, declares that this concerns the priest, the teacher of righteousness, whom God has established to build the congregation. Psalm 37:32 declares, Sofeh rasha l'tzadik, umevakesh lahamito. But the Qumran text declares, Bashru al hakohen harasha, asher tzofeh hatzadik, umevakesh lahamito, ki hu limed et haTorah, asher shalach elav, ואל לא יעזבנו ולא ירשיענו בהשפעתו. Yet another fragment quotes Psalms 37:14. חרב פתחו רשעים ודרכו קשתם להפיל עני ואביון. A little textual sleuthing reveals that according to the sect, the teacher of righteousness was himself a priest, and that he was opposed by the so-called wicked priest. The same commentary continued. Harbam tavo belibam, וקשתותיהם תשברנה. פשרו על ראשי אפרים ומנשה, אשר יבקשו לשלוח יד בכהן, ובאנשי עצתו, בעת המצרף הבאה עליהן. Is the reference here to the sect known as the Pharisees, or perhaps even the Sadducees? This wicked priest is not the same as the Antichrist of early Christian writings, though the New Testament does borrow from the language of the scrolls and may have modeled the Antichrist verses on some of the Qumran passages. Still, the overall tone of the Qumran commentary is hopeful. Adat bechiro asher yihiyu rashim v'sarim. The term elect is another parallel with the New Testament, since Jesus himself declares that a time of trial and tribulation is coming, but that for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. So, was Jesus borrowing Dead Sea sectarian language when it comes to the end of days? Or was he influenced by the sect? Or was such language placed in his mouth at a later time by the editors of the Gospels? As with so much else, the jury is out. Additionally, there is yet another scroll, one of the original scrolls discovered by the Bedouin in 1947, comprising an entire book of extra-biblical psalms. Should the psalms perhaps be added to our current Bibles? Why did the Psalms not find their way into the Bible as it has come down across the centuries? The answer is found in the Psalms themselves, which cleverly rework biblical themes, but which lack much originality. Clearly, the Psalms are not from the biblical period, but are later inventions of the Dead Sea sect. And the editors of the Bible, if they even knew the Psalms, found no place for them in the biblical text. Nevertheless, the Dead Sea Psalms are far from insignificant. Some of them emphasize standard themes, such as the righteousness of the God of Israel. Rak betuvcha yatzdik ish, uverov rachamecha, udvarcha lo yashuv achor. But the reader notices immediately that these psalms utilize certain language, terminology, and themes that are also found in the New Testament. One psalm states, Mi basar kazot, uma yetzer chemer lahagdil plaot, vahu ba'avon mirechem, va'ad shava be'ashmat me'al, va'ani yadati, ki lo la'enosh tzedakah, ve'lo le'ben adam tom. Compare this with the Christian concept of original sin as taught by the Apostle Paul. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. Paul also writes, For God has consigned all men to disobedience, that he may have mercy on all. Romans 11:32. Certainly, the sect believed that human effort paled in comparison to divine might and power. But the scrolls go further, declaring that everything is foreordained, including the character of each human soul. Ve'eda ki beyadcha yetzer kol ruach, v'chol pe'ulato hechinota b'terem barato. But they also held to another idea, which was beyond anything in the standard Judaism that has come down in tradition. They embraced the notion of double predestination. On the one hand, the righteous were predestined to be righteous from the beginning of time. Rak ata barata tzadik, umerechem hachinoto lemoed ratzon, lehishamer bevritcha, ulehitalech b'chol, ulehagish alav b'hamon rachamecha. But on the other hand, they believed that the wicked were just as predestined to be wicked. ורשעים בראת ליצר חרונך, ומרחם הקדשתם ליום הרגע. There is certainly a sense of predestination in the New Testament, and we now know that there is a basis in ancient literature for the Apostle Paul's words in the book of Romans. For whom he knew, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his Son, and that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Romans 8:29. The idea of predestination is one of the most difficult problems that Christian thinkers and theologians have ever faced. For if God predestined those who would follow him, what place is there for a person's free will? But by studying the Dead Sea Scrolls, we can get a much better sense of what predestination meant to the ancients and how this idea applies to the New Testament. There is an additional item of mystery we find in the scrolls, as well as the New Testament, a rather well-developed concept of two spirits rus in the world. In the Psalm scroll, we read, Ki lefi rochot tfilem ben tov l'rasha. In other words, people are consumed by two opposing spirits which control them and which God is able to discern. As far as the sect was concerned, a person's character was not so much a choice as a possession. Let's consider another specific passage from the Psalm scroll that sheds additional light on the New Testament Gospels. Odcha adoshem ki samta nafshi b'tzror ha'chaim u'teshoch ba'adi mikol mokshe shachat ki aritzim bikshu nafshi בתומכי בבריתך, בהמה סוד שווא, ועדת בליעל, לא ידעו כי מאיתך מעמדי. Here we find some important sectarian expressions. Almost all of the Dead Sea Psalms, unlike the biblical book of Psalms, begin with the words, I give thanks to you, followed by many statements having to do with the league of falsehood and the congregation of Belial. But of course, the sect believed that everyone not within the confines of their own group was in league with Satan and his demons. They were total exclusivists. Another Qumran psalm begins,
Odcha adoshem ki haskalateni ba'emetcha uverrazeh palecha hodatani.
Now consider a certain teaching of Jesus in a passage in the New Testament. I thank you, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and prudent and revealed them to babes. Matthew 11:25. Is Jesus simply borrowing an ancient literary convention, saying that mysteries have likewise been revealed to his disciples? Or is he sarcastically shooting barbs at the Dead Sea sect, who called themselves wise and prudent, while his own disciples, the babes, have been given true understanding? In fact, if these Qumran psalms are indeed known to Jesus and his followers, then we may see him cleverly mocking the members of this exclusive cult, borrowing their own favorite psalm introduction and turning it back on them. The members of the Qumran sect are the ones who are, in their own eyes, wise and prudent. They have been given understanding. Everyone else, including the disciples of Jesus, are but babes. Jesus, however, claims that the truth is hidden from the wise, that is, from the sect, and revealed plainly to his own babes, his disciples. And speaking of Jesus, another of the Dead Sea Psalms sounds curiously like the famous gospel passage known as the Beatitudes. ולספר טובך, לבשר ענבים לרוב רחמך, ולהשביע ממקור דעת כל נכי רוח, ואבלים לשמחת עולם. In Matthew's Gospel, we similarly read, "Blessed are the meek, and blessed are those who mourn." Elsewhere, the Dead Sea Psalms speak of a great apocalyptic battle at the end of the age. "V'shochvei afar herimu teren, v'tolad metim nas'u nes b'milchamot zedim, uv'avur shot shotef bli yavo b'mivtzar." Such depictions dovetail with other passages in the scrolls, which refer to the evil Kittim, doubtless the Romans. "V'kehamon maim rabim sha'on kolam, nefetz v'zerem lahashchit rabim." Indeed, the end times are an important New Testament theme, and we must ask the extent to which Qumranic thought influenced the early Christian sect, which was Jewish to its core. The scrolls taught, however, that they are in the midst of tribulation and that a messianic deliverer would be born. "Ki ba'u banim ad mishparei mavet, v'harit gever hatzara b'chevlea, ki b'mishparei mavet tamlit zachar, uv'chevlei sheol yagiach makor hareha, pele yoetz im gevuroto, v'yiflet gever mimashberim." We are reminded of the nativity story of Jesus, which relates that King Herod sought to murder all male infants in the town of Bethlehem, but that Mary and Joseph escaped with their infant to Egypt, as it were, out of the throes. There is, in ancient rabbinic tradition, the thought that the coming of the Messiah will be preceded by something akin to birth pangs. In Hebrew, chivlei HaMashiach, the pangs of the Messiah. In the final analysis, the Psalms scroll opens a window not just on ancient liturgical formulas, but on the geopolitical realities of the land of Israel during the Second Jewish Commonwealth. This literature enlightens the history of the age, and the history of the age enlightens the literature. Suddenly, a window opens on the days in which the great Jewish temple adorned the city of Jerusalem, the days in which the zealot freedom fighters struggled to win their independence, and the days in which the Roman eagle ultimately crushed them. But in spite of their melancholy end, the written legacy lives on.